Hey everybody, Paul Martin here. It's early August and you know what that means. It's back to school time, and what better way to celebrate going back to school than to create your kid an emergency kit, either one that's small that will fit in their backpack, or if you're like me, you create an entire backpack for your kid. Now, last year about this time on my blog, I talked about the emergency kit that I made for my stepdaughter, who at the time was going to be a freshman at the University of Mississippi. I've linked to that particular blog post below because it has a whole list of things that I put into the kit. I want to spend some time, a few minutes, talking about lessons learned over the last year, having a child that is very smart, but at the same time is not really into preparedness perhaps as much as I would like for her to be, and lessons learned about her using the bag from time to time. Now, the bag itself is here. Try to get that into the camera. It's a North Face brand bag, and actually that's one of the lessons I think is important. Not North Face itself, but one thing that I've noticed is that she would not have gone for having a bag in her car if it looked too military, too tactical. She was much more apt to have a bag in her car that if it looked like something that sorority girls at Ole Miss would carry. And so this was her backpack from high school, and it was in perfectly good shape, but apparently one must have a brand new backpack when one enrolls at the University of Mississippi your freshman year. The perfectly good North Face backpack that got you through years of high school is not acceptable. So the good news is that I was able to repurpose that bag into her emergency kit. Now, she's fortunate in that she has a vehicle on campus, and so she has a place to keep her bag so it doesn't stay in her dorm room. If she didn't have a car, obviously we would probably have her keep it in her dorm where she could make access to it. So look at the blog entry for a list of items that I put in it. The bag weighs approximately 20, maybe 25 pounds. I have not weighed it. But at the end of the day, when there's an emergency, what I've told her is, despite the fact we've gone through the bag, the contents of the bag, I've told her, spend a couple minutes flipping through the bag, looking at what your supplies are so that you know what resources you have available to you. Now, a few things that we learned over the year. One is, even though I can tell her what's in the bag right before she leaves, 2 weeks from now, she will have totally forgotten most of it. I've thought about keeping an inventory nearby where she can actually look and see what's on the list. The reality is that she's probably not going to pay a lot of attention to an inventory as well. And so I'm more than happy for her to call me and say, do I have X in my bag? And so you can experiment if you've got a kid and you're making them a backpack, an emergency bag, a get-home bag, call it whatever you want, whether or not to have a list of items in the bag itself. So I don't know that it's particularly helpful. It would be helpful to me if I were in her situation, but the reality is that she's not going to probably look at it. She's probably going to, in a real emergency, she's probably going to open the bag up and just look at the contents and get a better sense of what's in it from that way. A few of the things that I've learned that are important. Number one, when I create the bag, I know it is tempting when you make a bag for a child or for someone who's not really into this, that you may not use your grade A equipment. You may use things that you've purchased or the gimmies here or there. I personally made the decision that I wasn't going to do that, and so everything in the bag is brand name stuff. It's really high quality stuff because I would feel better knowing that she has high quality stuff. That's one thing that I insisted upon. And yes, it did make the bag a little more expensive putting it all together. But I've got one kid, it's my stepdaughter. She only goes to college once, and so I want to do it right for her moving forward. One of the mistakes that I made, and I hope that you avoid this mistake, and it wasn't big, but lesson learned. I put a multi-tool in the bag, a Leatherman multi-tool, had a knife, pliers, those sorts of things. And then she called me one day, and she needed something in the bag for some minor thing she needed to get fixed, and she didn't know where that was on the tool. And so one of the things I've started doing, in addition to the tool, with having the multi-tool, is to put some very basic supplies in the bag, some very basic tools. So, for example, I went tonight to the local grocery store. So let me get that on the camera. That is a KitchenAid, turn it up right here, KitchenAid pair of kitchen scissors. Comes with a nice little sheath to protect it. She was a little bit surprised that I was getting her kitchen shears, but as her mother pointed out, kitchen shears are really durable and you can cut through a lot of things. And so I'd rather have her with some basic tools that she doesn't have to try to figure out how to use. She knows how to use a pair of scissors. And so things like that. I also found her a small pocket knife. Rather than having to pull the blade out of the multi-tool, she just has a simple blade she can open. She needs to cut a thread off a piece of clothing, or she needs to cut some paracord or cut a piece of tape. Whatever it is, she has a knife rather than trying to dig through the multi-tool to get to the blade. So that was something that I learned over the last year. One of the other issues that we have adopted in her preparedness is one of the things I stressed to her is keeping her tires aired to the proper inflation. And she texted me when she was at what she calls the air place, meaning the convenience store with the air pump, and said, I couldn't do it because I didn't have any quarters. Well, there's $10 worth of quarters in the bag. And it never dawned on her to look through the bag. And I said, there's plenty of quarters in there for this sort of thing. And so what I did was, when she came home, was that I took $2 of quarters, actually about $8 or $10 worth of quarters, and I taped them together in $2 increments. And I wrote $2 on each stack of quarters. And I said, we're going to put these in your glove box, and this is for getting air. This is not for parking. This is not for whatever it is that you kids use coins for. This is solely so that when you go to a gas station and you need to put air, you always have $2 worth of quarters, so you can throw it in that machine, get 5 minutes worth of air, and get your tires up to where they need to be. So those are some of the things that I've done, some of the lessons that I've learned over time. Again, if you're sending a kid off to college and you're going to make them an emergency kit, spend a few minutes going through what's in the kit and how to use it. I put extra supplies in there because more than likely, if she is an emergency, she's a very social person, more than likely there's going to be somebody with her. It may be one of her roommates, maybe one of her guy friends, who knows, maybe one of the friends from back home. But I put extra supplies, extra gloves, extra eye protection, extra snacks in the bag, so that she has plenty of capacity to share with others, so that they can ride out what other emergency is facing them. So I wanted to share that with you. This is something that when her friends, and she shows it to her friends, some friends kind of like, ooh, that's kind of weird, and some friends say, that's a really good idea. I wish my parents did that. And so you'd be surprised at how many kids actually enjoy the idea of having an emergency kit in their vehicle. But hopefully this will give you some guidance, particularly in the blog link below, where I outline all the things that I put in the blog, or in the bag. So if you have suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Put them in the comments section below. We're always learning, and so I'd be happy to hear what you're doing and what's working for you and your kids. So thanks for watching. God bless America.